there has perhaps not been a car quite so eagerly awaited as the Perodua Aruz. We have been inundated with comments, with messages, with views for every update that we have featuring this car. And there has been delay after delay after delay getting in between us and this review. But mercifully, this morning, they managed to print the road taxes and stick it on the cars, which is why we are now giving you this full review. Okay, so now we're just going to do a quick walk around to try and point out all of the unique features on the Aruz. So, like a lot of you have been so excited to point out, this car does look quite a bit like the Toyota Rush. However, there are lots of unique little features, for example, like the grille that's unique to the Perodua Aruz, and so is the bumper treatment. If you notice the way the fog light surrounds cut in, those little sort of whiskers there that come in from the side. This is all unique to the Aruz. In fact, the bumpers were designed in order to achieve the best possible drag coefficient as to ensure that this car would be EEV certifiable. Now, lots and lots of work went into making sure this car was EEV certifiable. Perodua is of course committed to ensuring that its entire lineup is EEV certified, and of course the Aruz is part of that. In fact, this car has a claimed fuel consumption figure of 15.6 kilometers per litre, which is impressive for a car altogether, let alone one that's incredibly heavy like this, because it's got a ladder frame chassis underneath, the body on top, and of course it also has this rather slab-sided front, which obviously doesn't do very well for aerodynamics, and yet despite that, this car is still incredibly efficient. So now we're going into the little details. So you can see here we have full LED headlights only. The headlights themselves are full LEDs as per the Myvi, and then you have these LED positioning lights underneath, and if you see, it's like a dual bar sort of thing, and it merges very nicely straight into that grille. So as we said earlier, this grille is unique to the Perodua Aruz, and this is the new Perodua corporate face, as it were. Now, these lights, interestingly, are automatic. If I'm not mistaken, this is the first time we have automatic headlights on a Perodua. Now, this car is the advanced model, so we also get fog lights, as you can see there. And it also means that you get a built-in dash cam, which is up there, which we'll talk about in a second when we do the inside. And then you also have the dual cameras over there for ASA 2.0. Now, as I said, we'll get to that in a second. So on the side, we have these alloy wheels of size. I should have read this first. It's 17-inch. Okay, this is 17-inch dual-tone alloy wheels. And of course, this is standard across the range. And what isn't standard, I should add, are all these stickers. The stickers are, presumably this is going to be living its life as a test drive car at some dealership somewhere. But because we wanted the first batch so that we could get this review to you as soon as possible, we have to make do. But at least you have all of these sort of point outs in case I forget what's in this car. So it's got 7 seats. It has the built-in dash cam, like I was mentioning earlier. It has ASA 2.0 with pedestrian detection. This is now even smarter, and it works at speeds of up to 80 kilometers an hour, which is much better than what you have in the Myvi. You have 6 airbags as standard. You also have the built-in smart tag as standard, and it comes with tint. So no more getting ripped off by the tint guy. And of course, this car has a full 5-star ASEAN NCAP rating, ensuring this car is safe for you and your entire family. So now moving to the back, we have the back end. So the advanced model, as you can see, it gets this little sort of, it looks like a scuff plate, but it's not. And then you have the chrome element linking the headlights, and you have this black bar sort of thing that links these two across. Now the tail lights in this car are LEDs, and then there are these dual LED light bars that go in across like that. It's all very stylish. However, the indicators and the reverse lights are still of a regular bulb type thing. You also have the reversing camera back there. You have a shark's fin antenna on the top, and you also have the little reminder that you can elevate your style with Gear Up Perodua Originals. Just more new and interesting ways to take money out of your pocket. But as I said earlier, the bumpers have all been reprofiled as to ensure full EEV certification. So this bumper has also been reprofiled and is unique to the Perodua Aruz. Now, we're going to look in the boot, where I actually have a couple of bags. So it'll be a great way to show you guys how much space there is. So now we're in full 7-seat mode. So the third row is up. And as you can see, my backpack fits quite nicely here in this space. So you can actually fit quite a lot of luggage in here if you're smart about how you pack it. But of course, you can always fold these seats down. Now, these seats, if I'm not mistaken, they only fold forwards. They only fold forwards. They don't fold sort of like down and like that, and they don't tumble either. which means that when they are folded, you do have a little bit of a lip to load stuff in, but you know, beggars can't be choosers lah. Now let's move on to the inside of the car. Now, this car is best in class. Best in class. I don't know what they're comparing it to, the Honda HR-V, I guess. That's it, I think. So now, moving inside. So this is the cabin of the Perodua Aruz. I apologize for my jacket over there. I was in a meeting. Anyway, so the cabin of the Perodua Aruz is actually very different from the Toyota Rush. So the Rush actually has a different dash design. The dash design of this is unique to the Aruz because Perodua knew that this is exactly what Malaysian customers would want. The Rush, on the other hand, has a dual tone type thing, so it's black on the top and beige on the bottom. Malaysians don't like that. However, you do share the instrument cluster. You share that with the Rush. The center stack is also very different. And if you see here, see this? This vent sort of works. If you remember in the Perodua Alza review, we noted that the vents pushed air all the way to the back. So what this does is this pushes air up and into this vent. And then this vent is actually the rear vent for the blower. So it sucks air in here and then the blowers will blow it all the way to the third row, ensuring that everybody is comfortable. Now you can't control this vent, so it's sort of stuck there whether you like it or not, which means that even if you don't like your rear passengers, unfortunately they're also still getting aircon. Now down here you have all of the controls for some of the smarter systems like the auto start-stop system for the engine, the ASA and the traction control, and then here you have your headlight leveling. This is actually very important as to ensure that you don't end up glaring other people by accident. On this side you have your mirror controls here, left, right, the usual toggle lah, and this one folds the mirrors in and out. Now moving on to the center stack. So you have a head unit which is shared with the Perodua Myvi, except now the touchscreen is even more sensitive. It's a capacitive touchscreen now, so it's a lot easier to use. And then you have the digital aircon. Also here, you'll notice, you see this thing here with the dots and stuff? That is actually a seat belt indicator for the rear passengers. So if a rear passenger unbuckles their seatbelt, you'll be able to see a red light there indicating that they've taken it out. And then you can marah your children lah. So now, we're going to move into the back seat. Now, in the back seats, you have the usual anti-snatch left hook that was developed by Perodua. You also have the teh tarik hook. And then you have the rear seat. So now I understand that it looks like there isn't a lot of legroom. In fact, this is less standard legroom than what you'd get in a Perodua Myvi. However, you can adjust this. So by going down here, there's a lever here. I can push this back. And then when you push it back, you have a lot more legroom at your disposal. However, the fella in the back now doesn't have any legroom lah. But moving into the car itself, as you can see, you've got some lights back here. This is your third seat belt for the center passenger, and then you have the blowers. So this is what I was saying earlier, like you can control the blowers from here. They're separately controlled. You have 3 vents back here to bring the cold air from the front and push it into the back to ensure that all passengers are comfortable. Now, going back to these seats, the seats themselves are quite comfortable. I've sat in here for quite some time, but the seat backs are a bit flat, as you can see. That's good for the third passenger in the middle because it means that they're not going to feel left out or sort of uncomfortable because of the sides of the outer seats. But legroom is also good. As you can see, there's a very small hump on the floor, but there's plenty of space for feet on either side. Now, the setting that these seats were in earlier, right, that legroom, that's actually the optimum legroom position for activating all 3 rows. So now, if I just pull this seat back, struggle. Okay. Such engaging content. So now, see, with one touch, I could fold the seats like that, leaving quite a lot of room to step inside. And if you see the scuff sort of panel here extends all the way in, so it's much easier to get in. Just be sure not to catch your foot on these things lah. So now, in the back, if you can see, there's actually a decent amount of legroom back here. See? You can actually put human-sized adults back here, and they're not going to be, you know, dreadfully uncomfortable. But bear in mind that this gap here, if you can see, this gap is not very far, which means that your knees are going to be quite high up. So adults will not be too comfortable back here, or not for very long at least. Small children should be fine, but teenagers especially are going to whinge, especially after they hit their growth spurt. So now we're behind the wheel of the Perodua Aruz, and the The first thing that comes to mind is this car actually feels like an SUV, like a proper old school SUV. You sit really high up in this car, much higher than general traffic and much higher than you'd usually expect out of a modern SUV. And that's even before you start playing with the height adjustment in the seat. But what you get when you're sitting here is a very pleasant, aesthetically pleasing cabin that was definitely designed with the driver in mind. What's also very good in this car is the levels of refinement. So you have the same 1.5 liter engine that you find in the Alza and the Myvi, but in this car it feels a lot more distant, a lot more further away, and as a result it's much quieter behind the wheel, at least at city speeds. It's when you start pushing on a bit, specifically past 110, that's when it starts to get a little bit noisier in the cabin. The engine is fine. What you get a lot of is wind and road noise. Of course, you can do something about the road noise at least by opting for the gear up sound insulation or door comfort or whatever the hell they call it. And then it gets a little bit quieter in the cabin. But generally, you're not going to be all that comfortable audio-wise in this car at speeds north of 110. Think of it as sort of a safety feature. Again, the engine is very willing, and the engine, going back to it being willing, it is very happy to rev, and rev hard at that. I mention this because the Aruz is not exactly the lightest car in the world. This is partly due to its construction. The Aruz uses a ladder frame chassis upon which sits the body. And this sort of construction method means that the car itself is usually quite heavy, much heavier than a monocoque constructed vehicle. And as a result, the engine has to work quite hard to keep this thing going, especially at motorway speeds. In town, it's generally all right, but again, it's when you're pushing on, that's when you start feeling some of the shortcomings of the powertrain. The same goes for the gearbox. It's a perfectly competent 4-speed automatic when you're driving at town speeds, but the moment you start pushing on, you feel it kind of falter a bit. It also has a weird thing about dropping gears for no obvious reason. Like if you go down a hill, it'll just drop a gear. Just like that. You don't have to touch the nothing. The car just does it on its own, which I find very, very odd and slightly disconcerting. But I'm going to chalk that down to the fact that this car is brand new. It's only done 150 something kilometers. Despite the very, or rather agricultural nature of its construction, the Aruz is surprisingly a very town car. Driving it at town speeds is when it's most comfortable. Maneuvering it around town is when it's most comfortable. Despite the fact that it's very, very tall, this car is most at home in town. And perhaps it was our fault for expecting a little bit more. If you look at Perodua's cars, the Axia, the Beza, the Alza, the Myvi, they're all city cars, right? They're all happiest in the city. We all know this. They can do long distance driving, highway driving, they can do that. But they're most at home when you're out in town, when you're stuck in traffic and that sort of thing. We're not sure why we expected the Aruz to do better on the motorway. Perhaps because it's an SUV, because we thought it would be, more stable, heavier, more planted on the motorway and at motorway speeds or something to that effect. I'm not sure, but we had expectations, and in terms of motorway driving, it hasn't met them. What we can say is that the car is definitely very stable, it's definitely very planted, it's definitely very sure-footed, but it falls short just a little bit. The drivetrain could have been a bit more attentive. The engine, for example, in this car, it could be that they tuned this engine in order to achieve that fantastic fuel consumption rating of 15.6 kilometers per liter. I really think that might be the case, because in the Alza, this engine is properly perky. And in here, it feels sort of lethargic. You kind of have to wring its neck before it really goes anywhere. But again, if you just drive like a sensible human being at urban speeds, you're fine. And that brings us on to the safety. Now, if you drive at urban speeds, I was saying earlier, that's when the active safety assist is at its most active. So the ASA functions at speeds below 80 kilometers an hour. It incorporates forward collision warning, with pedestrian detection, AEB with pedestrian detection, as well as pedal miss operation control and vehicle departure alert, if I believe that's the correct term. So we saw all of these features in the MyVay, but it's been improved for the application here because it's ASA 2.0, so it's the second generation of ASA, right? And when you're driving at town speeds around 80 kilometers an hour, that's when it is at its most effective. Of course, above 80 it doesn't work. So when you're driving in town, that's when it can really save you. Perodua's mantra is always to service the 90%, and the 90th percentile would be more than happy with this car. It is surprisingly quiet, surprisingly refined, it's surprisingly frugal. This car is a surprise. And as far as Perodua products go, the Aruz's claim of elevating Perodua's status does ring true. This car is by far the best built, the most thoughtfully engineered, and undoubtedly going to be the most successful vehicle in its segment. Yet another one of Perodua's runaway successes. Aruz, it's a good car.